Hi, this is Dave. Here's a question. What can Christian business people learn from Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, and Dan Orlovsky? More importantly, what can you and I learn from them? Well, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, and Dan Orlovsky are all NFL quarterbacks. But more importantly, they have all very recently, unabashedly, and publicly proclaimed their faith in God. Now, Dan Orlovsky, who is a former backup quarterback and now in his role as NFL game commentator, in a moment of pending catastrophe, openly and spontaneously prayed on the air in front of millions of viewers. Patrick Mahomes, upon being interviewed immediately following the Chiefs' divisional championship, began the interview by praising God. Brock Purdy attributes his unusual maturity and calmness to his identity as a Christ follower. Jalen Hurts includes "In God We Trust" in his Instagram profile and has openly declared his Christian faith in multiple interviews. Now, each and every one of these men are living examples of what it means to strive to achieve excellence in the job and then using that influence gained by excellence, publicly and fearlessly proclaiming their faith in God in the public arena. And while these are the most visible professional athletes, the world of amateur and professional athletics is full of Christian athletes who do the same. And that leads us to a question. Why do professional athletes so easily and spontaneously proclaim their Christian faith, while Christian business people seem afraid and hesitant to do so? Let me repeat that. It's a powerful question. We should be asking this. Why do professional athletes so easily and spontaneously proclaim their Christian faith, while Christian business people seem afraid and hesitant to do so? Why is that? Let's think about it. Each of these men have achieved levels of excellence in their profession that have given them recognition and influence. In our world, excellence creates influence. I learned that a long time ago. And as a very young man, I was a late teenager, I think 19 years old, and I was selling men's clothing in a relatively expensive men's clothing store, and I was the number one salesperson in that chain. And one of the lines that we carried was a line of suits by Ole Cassini, who was a famous designer at the time. And he came to town, and the company had a cocktail reception for him. And one guy was invited to attend the reception from the store I worked in, and it was me. And there would be no reason to invite me, and the influence that I had, other than I was the best salesperson. Excellence leads to influence. I had influence because I was excellent. And that is true in our world. Excellence creates influence. If Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts were run-of-the-mill football players, we would not know about their faith, nor would we even consider it. It was because they achieved excellence in their profession that they created a following and were able to influence millions. Now, that's a pattern with a lot of biblical support. You may recall that Joseph became the number 2 most influential person in the world because he was excellent at what he did. Daniel achieved rare influence over a whole string of kings because his work stood out. Now, that's a lesson for Christian business people. We gain influence when we strive for excellence. By the way, just as a little sidelight here, our XI community is a place where Christian business people can come together to gain content and connections with other like-minded people. XI stands for excellence and influence. I'll put a link in the show notes. You can check it out. By the way, it's $5 a month. Anyway, Christian business people can learn this lesson. We gain influence when we strive for excellence. Now, it may be that the character traits that enable professional athletes to reach the heights of their profession It may be that those character traits are the same that inspire them to unabashedly admit their reliance on God. It takes perseverance, commitment, delayed gratification, self-confidence, and courage, to name a few, to rise to the top of that field of endeavor. And it may be that the average Christian business person is just not so fully equipped with these virtues: perseverance, commitment, delayed gratification, self-confidence, and courage. For example, I'm sure it takes courage to face a 300-pound lineman who's intent on squashing you on Sunday afternoons, and it may be that courage developed on the field oozes over in the opportunity to defeat the fear of being outspoken about one's faith. Maybe that's how it works. And it may be that Christian business people are more influenced by fear than the athletes are. Most Christian business people, I think, when they get down to things, they will admit to being afraid of what others will think of them. They're afraid of losing a customer. They're afraid of tarnishing their image in front of their employees and their colleagues and customers. So fear is the issue. Regardless, so I don't know whether it's courage or lack of it or fear, but regardless of the root cause, there is one simple, kind of superficial answer to the question of why don't Christian business people so comfortably proclaim their faith in it? And that answer is this simple thing: habit. See, we have created the habit of swallowing down our urge to give credit to God. Repeat it enough, and it becomes almost second nature. We do it out of habit. At some point, it was a conscious choice. We were driven by fear. We chose not to give credit to God because we were afraid. But then it was easier to do it the second time and the third time. Before long, we repeated it over and over again to the point where it's a subconscious habit. So why don't Christian business people so easily and spontaneously proclaim their Christian faith? Why not? Because there's the habit. They've built the habit of not doing it. So our challenge is to break the habit and put in its place a more positive one. Well, should we? Should we take the time and effort to do that? Well, of course. God commands it. Let me quote here from Matthew 10, verses 32 through 33, quote, "Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven." Wow. That's pretty strong to the point. So God commands it. And our times call for it. There can be no doubt that our culture is sliding darker and darker by the day. And the forces of evil around us are becoming more blatant and more pervasive than at any time in our lifetimes. Now, part of the reason for that is Christian business people's reticence to acknowledge God in their business and their lives. With God removed from our marketplace, we've left open the door for more sinister forces to take that place. So one way to begin to turn the tide is to mimic Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and give credit to God in every circumstance and opportunity. Easier said than done, but there are courageous people out there. I remember 25 years ago or so, listening to Zig Ziglar address the dinner meeting of the National Speakers Association convention. So there's 1,000 professional speakers, and Zig is the after dinner speaker. And he began his keynote address with a short testimonial and praise to God. Then he launched into his presentation. No one objected. Each of these men, at some point in the past, had to overcome their fear and replace it with faith. They claimed this passage, and again I'm going to quote from Scripture, 2 Timothy 1 through 7. Quote, "For God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline." End quote. So the first step to changing a habit is to become aware of it. And then at some point, you have to act. You have to do it. Do it once, and the second time becomes easier. Do it a few times, and it's easier yet. Do it a few more times, then it's a habit. You don't even have to think about it anymore. So, back to the question in the title. What can Christian business people learn from Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, and Dan Orlovsky? A couple things. We can learn a couple things. Number one, strive for excellence. Focus on creating the character traits that contribute to excellence on the job. That's one. Number two, take a step of faith, claim God's promise, and break the habit of ignoring the opportunity to give God the credit. Step in. Do it once. See what happens. Do it twice. Turn it into a habit. Now, I'd love to hear about your successes in overcoming this fear and breaking the habit. Feel free to add any comments to the comments section. Okay? That's it. We're done. Bye-bye.